"She's killing him! Please, sir, she's killing him!" The scream shattered the silence of the sprawling Moretti estate on a rainy Tuesday in Chicago. Dante Moretti, the most feared capo in the city, kicked open the heavy oak doors of the nursery, his gun drawn. What he saw froze the blood in his veins. His fiancée, Vivienne, a woman he already suspected of treachery, was leaning over the crib of his 6-month-old nephew, Leo. In her hand, she held a gleaming, silver scalpel. The maid, Clara, was on her knees, clawing at Vivienne's dress, sobbing, begging her to stop. It looked like a cold-blooded execution. It looked like pure evil. But what happened in the next 10 seconds wouldn't just change the hierarchy of the underworld. It would reveal a conspiracy so twisted that even the FBI couldn't predict it. You think you know who the villain is? You have no idea. This is the story of how a single unbelievable act exposed a monster living in plain sight. Chicago, October 14th. The marriage was never about love. In our world, the world of high-stakes logistics, shadow banking, and waste management, love is a liability. The union between Dante Moretti and Vivienne Roche was a merger, nothing more. A peace treaty written in blood between the Italian South Side and the French-Canadian syndicates controlling the northern border. Dante Moretti was a man sculpted from violence and expensive scotch. At 32, he ran the city with a terrifying efficiency. He was handsome in a way that warned you not to touch. Dark eyes, sharp jaw, and a silence that spoke louder than threats. He didn't want a wife. He wanted order. Vivienne was the price of that order. They called her the Ice Queen in the tabloids. At 26, she was a former surgeon who had lost her license under mysterious circumstances 2 years prior. Tall, pale, with eyes like shattered glass, she moved through the Moretti estate like a ghost. She spoke rarely. She smiled never. "She's a statue," Dante had complained to his underboss, Salvatore Sal Ricci, a week after she moved in. "I come home, she's reading in the library. I leave, she's staring out the window. She's plotting something, Sal. Roche didn't send me a wife. He sent me a spy." But the real power in the house wasn't the fiancé. It was the help. Enter Clara. Clara was 24, with bouncing curls, a warm laugh, and a way of making everyone feel at home. She had been the head nanny for Dante's nephew Leo, ever since Dante's brother and sister-in-law died in a car bombing 6 months ago. Leo was Dante's heir, his heart, the only innocent thing left in his life. And Clara was Leo's surrogate mother. Clara was everything Vivienne was not, warm, submissive, and seemingly adoring of Dante. She would leave fresh espresso by his door. She would iron his shirts with a specific lavender starch he liked, and she would look at him with wide, doe-like eyes that whispered promises he was too honorable, or perhaps too busy, to accept. The tension in the house was palpable. The staff loved Clara. They feared Vivienne. "I don't trust her with the baby," Clara whispered to Dante one evening in the kitchen, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Miss Vivienne." She stares at Leo. "It's not a loving look, sir. It's clinical, like she's dissecting a frog." Dante's grip on his glass tightened. If she touches a hair on his head, the alliance is over. And she's dead. Vivienne, standing in the shadows of the hallway, heard every word. She didn't cry. She didn't storm in to defend herself. She simply adjusted the silk cuff of her blouse, her face, an unreadable mask, and walked away. She knew something Dante didn't. She knew that warmth could be a mask for fire, and that ice was sometimes the only thing that could stop the bleeding. But she had no proof. Not yet. November the 2nd. The incident began with a rash. Baby Leo, usually a giggling bundle of joy, had become fussy. His skin was mottled with red patches, and his breathing had developed a slight wheeze. Dante had summoned the family doctor, Dr. Aris Thorne, a man on the payroll, discreet and expensive. Thorne had examined the boy, prescribed a mild steroid cream, and assured Dante it was just eczema. "He's stressed," Clara had cooed, rocking the baby while shooting a fearful glance at Vivian across the room. Babies pick up on tension in the house. Maybe there's too much negative energy around him. Vivian was sitting in the corner of the nursery, her posture rigid. She stood up, walking over to the crib. "Let me see the rash," Vivian said. Her voice was low, raspy from disuse. "No." Clara pulled the baby back, clutching him tight. "You'll scare him. Sir, please." Dante stepped between them, his chest a wall of muscle. "Back off, Vivian. You're not a doctor anymore, remember?" Vivian looked up at him, her eyes cold but searching. "Thorne is an idiot. That isn't eczema. Look at the petechiae on his neck. It's a reaction to a toxin." "A toxin?" Dante scoffed. "We live in a fortress. Who is poisoning him? You?" "Check the detergent," Vivian said flatly. "Or the oils she uses." She pointed a manicured finger at Clara. Clara burst into tears. "I use organic lavender oil. I buy it myself from the market. How could you accuse me of hurting Leo? I love him like my own." Dante's patience snapped. He grabbed Vivian's arm, perhaps a little too roughly, and marched her to the door. "Get out. Stay out of the nursery. If I see you near him without supervision again, I'm sending you back to your father in a box." Vivian didn't fight him. She let him push her out. But as the door closed, she caught a glimpse of Clara's face, buried in the baby's shoulder. Clara wasn't crying. She was smiling, a small, triumphant smirk that vanished the second Dante turned back around. Vivian went to her room, but she didn't sleep. Instead, she opened her locked suitcase. Inside, hidden beneath layers of silk lingerie, was a small, portable toxicology kit. She hadn't lost her license because of incompetence. She lost it because she refused to let a powerful senator's son die on her table to cover up a crime. She was a surgeon, and she was a scientist. That night, while the house slept, Vivian crept into the laundry room. The air smelled suffocatingly sweet. Lavender. She found the bottle of essential oil Clara used for Leo's bedding. It was labeled organic lavender. Vivian uncorked it and took a sample, dripping it onto a reactive strip from her kit. She waited 3 minutes. The strip didn't turn purple, for lavender. It turned a violent, dark green. Oleander derivative. It wasn't enough to kill an adult, but cumulative exposure to an infant. It would cause respiratory failure, heart arrhythmia, and eventually a cardiac arrest that would look like SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Vivian's hands shook. This wasn't negligence. This was a slow assassination. She pocketed the vial. She needed to tell Dante. But who would he believe? The Ice Queen spy, or the weeping, devoted maid who warmed his bed with espresso and kindness? She needed undeniable proof, or she needed to act. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house shifted. Dante was leaving for a meeting with the commission, a sit-down that would leave the house unguarded by the primary enforcers for 3 hours. "Take care of him," Dante told Clara, kissing Leo's forehead. "I'll be back by noon." "I will, sir. With my life," Clara promised. As Dante's motorcade rolled down the long driveway, Vivian watched from the second-floor balcony. She saw Clara wave goodbye, then turn back toward the house. Clara's demeanor changed instantly. The slumped, submissive shoulders straightened. She pulled a phone from her apron pocket and typed a quick message. Vivian didn't know who the text was for, but she knew the clock was ticking. She went to her closet and changed out of her heels into tactical boots. She strapped a small holster to her thigh, hidden under her dress. She wasn't just a surgeon. She was a roach, and she wasn't going to let a baby die to facilitate a power play. She walked down the hallway toward the nursery. The door was ajar. "Shh, shh, little prince," she heard Clara's voice. But the tone was different now. It was mocking. "Go to sleep. Uncle Dante is going to be so sad. But then he'll need someone to comfort him, won't he? Someone to help him forget." Vivian stopped. It wasn't just about killing the heir. It was about securing the throne. Clara wanted to be the Mafia queen, and the only things standing in her way were a 6-month-old baby and the arranged fiancé. Vivian pushed the door open. Clara jumped, dropping a pillow she had been holding a little too close to Leo's face. "Miss Vivian!" Clara gasped, her face flushing. "You startled me. You're not supposed to be in here." "Get away from the crib," Vivian said, her voice like steel. "Make me," Clara sneered. The mask dropped completely. "You think he'll believe you? I've been feeding him whispers about your mental instability for weeks. The lonely, barren wife. Jealous of the baby. If something happens to Leo while you're here, who do you think takes the bullet?" Clara reached into the crib. "Don't," Vivian warned. "He's struggling to breathe," Clara said, her voice dripping with fake concern as she pinched the baby's nose for a split second, making him gasp. "Oh no! Help! Someone help!" Clara screamed at the top of her lungs. "Help! She's hurting him! She's crazy!" Vivian knew she had been set up, but looking at the baby, she saw something worse. Leo's lips were turning blue. The cumulative poison was peaking, or Clara had given him a concentrated dose just now. His throat was closing. Anaphylaxis. Vivian didn't think about the optics. She didn't think about Dante's gun or the guards rushing up the stairs. She thought about the airway. She lunged forward, shoving Clara into the wall. She grabbed Leo. He wasn't breathing. "You witch!" Clara screamed, lunging at her. Vivian backhanded her with a force that sent the maid sprawling. Vivian ripped the baby's onesie open. She needed to perform an emergency cricothyrotomy. She didn't have her medical bag. She scanned the room. On the changing table, a silver scalpel, left over from when the doctor lanced a boil last week. No, that was too convenient. Clara had it there. Why? To plant it on Vivian? It didn't matter. Vivian grabbed it. The door burst open. Dante had returned early. "She's killing him! Please, sir, she's killing him!" Clara shrieked, pointing a shaking finger. Dante saw Vivian, holding the blade over the baby's throat. This brings us back to the beginning. November 2nd, the nursery. Dante's finger tightened on the trigger of his custom Beretta. He was a man who could hit a moving target at 50 yards, and right now, his target was the woman he had promised to protect, holding a blade to his bloodline. "Drop it, Vivian," Dante growled, his voice vibrating with a lethal calm. "Step away from the crib, or I will paint the walls with you." "Don't shoot!" Clara screamed, crawling toward Dante's legs, sobbing hysterically. "She's going to slit his throat. She's crazy. Shoot her, Dante. Shoot her!" Vivian didn't look at Dante. She didn't look at the gun barrel aimed directly at her temple. Her entire world had narrowed down to the small, blue V-shape of skin at the base of Leo's throat. "He's not breathing, Dante," Vivian said. Her voice wasn't trembling. It was the voice of a surgeon in the OR. Cold, authoritative, detached. "His airway has collapsed due to anaphylactic shock. If I don't create an opening in the next 10 seconds, he is brain dead. In 20, he is gone." "Liar!" Clara shrieked. "She's lying. Just kill her." "I'm giving you 3 seconds," Dante warned, cocking the hammer. 1. Vivian looked at the baby. His chest was still. His lips were the color of a bruised plum. 2. Vivian made a choice. She would rather die saving an innocent life than live knowing she let a baby die to save herself. She ignored the gun. With a fluid, practiced motion, she pressed the scalpel into the soft hollow of the baby's throat. Bang! The gunshot deafened the room. Plaster exploded from the wall inches above Vivienne's head. Dante had missed on purpose, a warning shot, but he froze when he saw what happened next. Vivienne didn't slash. She didn't stab. She made a precise, vertical incision, no longer than a centimetre. Blood welled up, bright and terrifying, but Vivienne didn't flinch. She used her thumb to spread the tissue and inserted the hollow casing of a ballpoint pen she had snatched from the changing table earlier. A sharp, wet hiss filled the room. It was the sound of air rushing into a vacuum. Leo's chest heaved. Once, twice. And then, a sound that brought Dante to his knees. A weak, raspy cry. Vivienne didn't stop. She held the makeshift tube in place, her hands covered in blood, checking the baby's pulse with her other hand. She turned her head slowly to face Dante, her eyes blazing with a fury that matched his own. "Call 911, she commanded. "Tell them we have a pediatric airway obstruction, and get this screeching banshee out of my operating room." Dante stood there, the gun lowered to his side, his heart hammering against his ribs. He looked at Clara, who had stopped screaming and was now staring at the baby with a look of pure, unadulterated horror. Not because the baby was hurt, but because the baby was alive. "Sal!" Dante roared, his voice shaking the windows. Salvatore Ricci, the underboss, burst into the room with 2 enforcers. "Boss!" "Get the medics! Now!" Dante barked. He holstered his weapon and walked over to the crib. He looked at Vivienne. She was pale, her dress ruined with blood, but she held the tube steady with hands of stone. "You cut him," Dante whispered, disbelief warring with relief. "I bypassed the obstruction," Vivienne corrected, her adrenaline starting to crash, making her knees weak. "I saved him. But the poison is still in his system. We need the antidote." "Poison?" Dante's eyes snapped to Clara. Clara scrambled back, her face a mask of innocence. "She's lying. She cut his throat, and now she's making up stories to cover it. Look at her. She's covered in blood. She's a monster." Dante looked between the 2 women. One was his brother's trusted nanny, weeping on the floor. The other was the daughter of his enemy, holding a bloody knife. The old world rules said, "Trust the loyalty you know." But Dante's gut, the instinct that had kept him alive in the Chicago underworld for a decade, was screaming that something was wrong. "Sal," Dante said quietly, "take Leo and the medics to the private clinic. Secure the perimeter. No one in, no one out. And her?" Sal gestured to Vivienne. Dante's eyes hardened. "Lock her in the basement holding cell. And Clara, confine her to her quarters. Until I figure out who almost killed my nephew, nobody leaves this house." As the guards grabbed Vivienne's arms, she didn't resist. She just looked at Dante. "Check the lavender oil," she said softly as they dragged her away. "Check the oil." November 2nd, 11:00 p.m. The holding cell in the basement of the Moretti estate was not a dungeon, but it wasn't a guest room either. It was a windowless concrete box with a steel door, a cot, and a single light bulb. It was where Dante Moretti broke his enemies. Vivienne sat on the edge of the cot. She had wiped the blood from her hands with the hem of her dress. She was shivering, the adrenaline withdrawal hitting her hard. The heavy steel door groaned open. Dante stepped in. He had removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing tattoos that marked his rank and history. He brought a chair and sat backward on it, facing her. He looked exhausted. "Leo is stable," Dante said, breaking the silence. "Dr. Thorne says the incision was textbook. You missed the jugular by millimeters. You saved him." Vivienne let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Good. Thorne also said that if you hadn't cut him, he would have suffocated before the ambulance arrived." Dante leaned forward, his dark eyes searching hers. "So, I owe you a debt. But we have a problem, Vivienne." "The poison," she said. Thorne ran a tox screen. He found traces of inflammation markers, but no specific toxin. He thinks it was a severe allergic reaction. Maybe peanuts? Maybe dust. It wasn't peanuts, Vivian said sharply. It was oleander, Nerium oleander. Specifically, a concentrated distillate mixed into the lavender oil Clara uses on his bedding. It absorbs through the skin. It causes heart failure that mimics natural causes. It's a woman's poison, Dante. Subtle. Slow. Dante rubbed his face. I sent Sal to the laundry room. He found the bottle of lavender oil. Vivian sat up straighter. And he tested it. He even drank a drop of it. Dante's voice dropped an octave. It's just lavender, Vivian. 100% organic essential oil. No poison, no oleander. Vivian felt the blood drain from her face. She switched it. Or, Dante said, his voice hardening, there never was any poison. Maybe you needed to play the hero. Maybe you needed to prove your worth to the family. So you induced a panic attack in the baby, and then saved him. I am a surgeon. Vivian stood up, her anger flaring. I took an oath. Do you think I would slice open a 6-month-old infant for attention? I think you're a roach, Dante spat, standing up to tower over her. And your father is known for long cons. Clara has been with us for 2 years. She loved my brother. She loves Leo. You've been here 2 months. Clara is in love with you, Vivian countered, stepping into his space. She wants to be the mother of that house. She wants to be Mrs. Moretti. And Leo was the only thing keeping you tied to the memory of your brother and me. I'm just the obstacle in her way. Dante grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. His touch was rough, but his thumb brushed her cheekbone with a confusing gentleness. Give me one reason why I shouldn't put a bullet in you right now for cutting my flesh and blood. One piece of proof. Vivian didn't flinch. I kept a sample. Dante froze. What? Last night, when I tested the oil, I knew she might switch the bottle if I got caught, so I dipped a handkerchief in the original bottle. It's taped to the underside of the vanity drawer in the guest bathroom. Dante stared at her for a long moment. He saw the defiance in her eyes. It wasn't the look of a liar. It was the look of someone who had calculated every move. If I go up there, Dante whispered, and there is nothing under that drawer, you don't leave this room alive. Go, she challenged. Dante turned and banged on the door for the guard. Watch her. If she moves, shoot her. He stormed out. Vivian sat back down, her heart pounding. She prayed the adhesive tape had held. She prayed Clara hadn't found that, too. November 3rd, 1:00 a.m. Dante returned 20 minutes later. His face was unreadable. In his hand, he held a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a lace handkerchief, stained with a faint, oily residue. He threw the bag onto the small table. Sal ran it through the mass spectrometer we use for testing product purity, Dante said. Vivian waited. Oleander, Dante said. The word hung in the air like smoke. High concentration, lethal over time. Vivian closed her eyes, relief washing over her. I told you. Dante paced the small cell, his energy shifting from aggression to a predatory focus. So the maid tries to kill the heir. She frames the fiancé. She waits for the baby to die so she can comfort the grieving uncle. He laughed, a dark, humorless sound. It's almost poetic. But there's a problem. What problem? Clara is a nobody, Dante said. She's a girl from the suburbs, nursing school dropout. How does a suburban girl get her hands on military-grade oleander distillate? That's not something you buy at the grocery store. That's synthesized. That's professional. Vivian frowned. You think she has a backer? I think she's not Clara from the suburbs, Dante said. Sal dug deeper while the lab was running the test. We ran her fingerprints, not against the employment database, but against the federal watch lists. Dante leaned in close, his voice a dangerous whisper. Her name isn't Clara. It's the Sparrow. She's a freelance cleaner. She specializes in accidental deaths for high-net-worth families. And guess who wired $50,000 to an offshore account in her name 3 days ago? Vivian's mind raced. Who? Your father, Dante said. The world stopped. Vivian felt like she had been punched in the gut. No, that's impossible. My father arranged this marriage. He wants the alliance. Does he? Dante asked. Or did he want to plant you here as the perfect scapegoat? If Leo dies, and you are found with the weapon, I kill you. The alliance breaks. The Roche family claims I murdered their daughter in a rage. They go to war with the moral high ground, and they take my territory while I'm fighting the feds. Vivian sank back onto the cot. It made perfect, sickening sense. Her father, Henri Roche, was a ruthless tactician. He had never loved her. She was just a pawn. If sacrificing her meant destroying the Moretti Empire from the inside, he wouldn't hesitate. So, Vivian whispered, her voice trembling. What happens now? Do you kill me because I'm a Roche? Dante looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the blood on her dress. Blood she spilled to save his nephew, defying her own father's plot. He saw the intelligence in her eyes. He unlocked the cell door. No, Dante said, extending a hand to her. You saved Leo. You went against your blood to save mine. That makes you Moretti now. Vivienne hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and solid. We're going upstairs, Dante said, a cold smile playing on his lips. Clara, or whatever her name is, thinks she won. She thinks you're in here screaming. She thinks I'm grieving. What are we going to do? Vivienne asked. We're going to put on a show, Dante said. And then we're going to make them wish they never touched a child of this family. Upstairs in the master suite. Clara was pacing the floor of the nursery, which was now empty. She was texting furiously on a burner phone. Target survived. Complications. The fiancé intervened, requesting extraction. She hit send. Suddenly, the hallway lights flickered and died. The house went pitch black. Clara froze. She reached for the gun she kept taped behind the changing table. A Glock 19. Going somewhere, Clara? Dante's voice came from the darkness of the doorway. Sir, Clara stammered, raising the gun. I heard a noise. Is she gone? Is the witch gone? A lighter flicked on. The small flame illuminated Dante's face. He looked like a demon rising from hell, and standing right beside him, holding a very large, very sharp surgical bone saw, was Vivienne. The witch is right here, Vivienne said calmly, and she's ready to operate. Clara panicked. She raised the gun to fire at Dante, but she was too slow. A shadow moved behind her. Sal Ricci emerged from the bathroom, wrapping a garrote wire around Clara's wrists, yanking the gun away. Let me go, Clara screamed, kicking and thrashing. You don't know who I work for. You start a war if you touch me. Dante stepped into the room, the lighter illuminating the cold fury in his eyes. The war already started, Dante said. You just didn't realize you were on the losing side. He turned to Vivian. She's all yours, Kara. Find out where your father is hiding. Use whatever tools you need. Vivian stepped forward, the bone saw gleaming in the flickering light. She looked at the woman who had tried to suffocate an innocent baby. I need to know exactly what dose you gave him, Vivienne said, her voice clinical and terrifying. And I'm going to peel back every layer of lies until I find the truth. Anatomically speaking, of course, Clara screamed, but the night was far from over. Because as Clara broke, sobbing out coordinates and bank account numbers, Sal's radio crackled to life. Boss, the perimeter guard's voice came through, sounding panicked. We have company, 3 SUVs, blacked out. They just rammed the front gate. Dante checked his weapon. Roach? No, the guard shouted over the sound of automatic gunfire. It's not Roach, it's the feds, FBI, and... Wait, they're not alone. They have your brother with them. Dante froze. My brother is dead. He's standing right here, boss, and he's telling us to stand down. Dante and Vivienne looked at each other. The conspiracy wasn't just about a rival family or a treacherous father. The dead man had returned, and he wanted his throne back. November 3rd, 1:15 a.m. The front doors of the Moretti estate didn't open. They were blown off their hinges. Dante stood at the top of the grand staircase, his gun drawn, shielding Vivienne behind him. Sal Ricci and 3 loyal enforcers took positions behind the marble pillars of the foyer. The air was thick with dust and the smell of cordite. Through the smoke, a figure walked in. He was flanked by men in tactical gear with FBI emblazoned on their vests, but they didn't move like cops. They moved like mercenaries. The man in the center lowered his assault rifle. He had the same dark hair as Dante, the same sharp jawline, but his eyes were lighter, a piercing, icy hazel. He wore a Kevlar vest over a tattered suit. Marco, Dante's voice cracked. It was the sound of a man seeing a ghost. Marco Moretti grinned. It wasn't a warm smile. It was a predator's baring of teeth. Hello, little brother. You look like you've seen a dead man. You died, Dante whispered, lowering his gun slightly, his shock overriding his training. We buried you. I identified the body. The car bomb. A body double, Marco said, stepping over the debris. A poor drifter I pulled off the street. Dental records are easy to fake when you own the coroner. I had to disappear, Dante. The Roche family was closing in. I needed them to think the head of the snake was cut off, so I could strike from the tall grass. You left me, Dante said, his shock turning to a simmering rage. You left me to clean up the mess. You left your son. Leo needed a father. And I'm here now, Marco said, spreading his arms. I'm back to take what's mine, the family, the territory, and my son. He looked around the foyer. Where is he? Where is Leo? Vivienne stepped out from behind Dante. She still held the bone saw, though she had lowered it. She looked at Marco, analyzing him with the same clinical precision she used on a patient. She saw the dilated pupils, the slight tremor in his left hand, the way he scanned the room not for threats, but for exits and valuables. And most importantly, she noticed what he didn't ask. He didn't ask if Leo was healthy. He didn't ask about the poisoning. He didn't ask about his wife, who had died in the same explosion he supposedly survived. He's safe, Vivienne said coldly. No thanks to the people you let into this house. Marco's eyes snapped to her. The Roche girl. I heard Dante bought himself a bride. Pretty thing. Shame about your father. What about my father? Vivienne asked. He's dead, Marco said casually. My friend's here. He gestured to the armed men. Paid Henri Roche a visit an hour ago. The northern border is mine again. Dante stiffened. You killed a commission boss without a sit-down. That's war, Marco. That's suicide. It's a revolution, Marco snapped. The old ways are dead, Dante. I made a deal. The feds get the lower-level runners, and I get immunity. I get to rule Chicago as a legitimate businessman. But I need the assets. I need the trust fund. The pieces clicked into place for Dante. The Moretti family fortune wasn't in a vault. It was in a trust secured by biometric data. Specifically, the DNA of the heir. That's why you're here, Dante said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. Not for your brother, not for your son. You're here for the money. You need Leo's fingerprint to unlock the offshore accounts. It's my money, Marco roared, his calm facade cracking. I built this empire, and you're You're just the caretaker. Now bring me the boy." From the floor above, a shrill laugh echoed. Dante and Vivian looked up. Sal had dragged Clara out onto the balcony overlooking the foyer. She was bound and gagged, but Sal pulled the gag down. "Tell them, Clara," Marco shouted. "Tell them it's over." Clara looked down at Dante, her eyes gleaming with madness. "He was never dead, you idiot," she spat at Dante. "I've been warming his bed for 2 years while you mourned him. I was the one who planted the bomb. I was the one who killed his wife." Dante felt the world tilt. What? She was going to leave him, Clara sneered. She was going to go to the police. Marco needed her gone. He needed a fresh start. So we blew her up, and we would have gotten away with it if you hadn't been so stubborn about guarding the brat. Vivian looked at Marco with pure disgust. You killed your own wife? You let this woman poison your own son just to frame me and create chaos? I didn't want him poisoned, Marco defended, sounding like a petulant child. Clara went off script. She was supposed to just scare you off, but it doesn't matter now. Give me the boy, Dante, and I'll let you walk away. I'll let you live. Dante raised his gun again. The brotherly love had evaporated, replaced by the cold, hard resolve of the Don. You're not my brother, Dante said. My brother died 6 months ago. You're just a ghost, and I banish ghosts. Kill them, Marco ordered the mercenaries. Kill everyone but the baby. November 3rd. 1:15 a.m., the foyer. The explosion of the front doors wasn't just a sound. It was a physical blow that shook the foundation of the Moretti estate. The heavy oak, reinforced with steel, splintered inward, sending shards of wood flying like shrapnel across the marble floor. Dante Moretti didn't flinch. He shoved Vivian behind the thick, fluted column of the grand staircase, his body becoming a human shield. His custom beretta was already up, the safety off, his eyes scanning the swirling cloud of dust and drywall hanging in the entryway. Sal! Dante barked, his voice cutting through the ringing in their ears. Positions, protect the stairs. Salvatore, Sal. Ricci, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but moving with the grace of a veteran soldier, slid behind an overturned mahogany table. 3 loyal enforcers fanned out, their weapons trained on the smoke. Then, the silence returned. A heavy, suffocating silence. Through the haze, footsteps echoed. Click, clack, click. Not the hurried steps of a tactical team, but the arrogant, leisurely stride of a man who owns the ground he walks on. A silhouette emerged. He was flanked by 6 men in full tactical gear, black helmets, body armor, suppressed assault rifles. But the man in the center wore a tattered, dust-covered suit. He held an assault rifle loosely in one hand, the barrel pointing at the floor. As the dust settled, the face became clear. Dante felt the blood drain from his extremities. His heart, usually a steady drum in the face of death, skipped a beat. It was a face he had kissed in a coffin 6 months ago. It was a face he had wept over. Marco, Dante whispered. The name felt like glass in his throat. Marco Moretti stopped 10 feet inside the foyer. He looked older, gaunter, his eyes rimmed with red, but the cruel curve of his mouth was unmistakable. He smiled, and it was like looking at a wolf baring its teeth. Hello, little brother, Marco said. His voice was raspy, damaged from the smoke, but commanding. You look like you've seen a ghost. Put the gun down. You know you can't shoot me. You're dead, Dante said, his voice rising, fighting the shock that threatened to paralyze him. I buried you. I identified the dental records, the car bomb. There was nothing left but a body double, Marco interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. A homeless drifter with a similar build. It cost me 50 grand to swap the dental records and bribe the coroner. A small price to pay for a clean slate. Marco took a step forward, his boots crunching on the glass. I had to disappear, Dante. The Roach family. This woman's father. He pointed the barrel of his rifle toward Vivian. They were closing in. They were going to indict me. I needed them to think the head of the snake was cut off. I needed you to take the heat while I maneuvered from the shadows. You left me, Dante said. The shock was evaporating, replaced by a cold, searing rage. You left me to clean up your mess. You left the family vulnerable. You left your son. At the mention of Leo, Marco's expression didn't soften. It tightened. I'm here now, Marco snapped. I'm back to take what's mine, the territory, the connections, and the boy. He scanned the room, his eyes darting up the stairs. Where is he? Where is the heir? Vivian stepped out from behind Dante. She still held the surgical bone saw she had used to threaten Clara. Her dress was ruined, stained with the blood of the nephew she had saved, but her posture was regal. She looked at Marco not with fear, but with the diagnostic stare of a surgeon looking at a tumor. He is safe, Vivian said, her voice like ice. No thanks to you. You let a poisoner live in his nursery. Marco laughed, a dry, hacking sound. Ah, the Roche bride. Pretty. Sharp tongue. Shame about your father. Vivian went still. What about my father? Dead, Marco said casually, as if discussing the weather. My associates paid Henry Roche a visit an hour ago. The northern border is mine again. I made a deal with the feds, Dante, the corrupt ones. I give them the low-level runners, they give me immunity. I come back as a legitimate businessman. But to do that, I need the trust fund. The realization hit Dante like a physical blow. The Moretti family fortune, hundreds of millions in liquid assets, was locked in an offshore trust. It was biometric. It required the fingerprint of the living Don, or his direct male heir. That's why you're here, Dante said, his grip on the gun tightening until his knuckles turned white. Not for your brother. Not for your son. You're here because your fingerprints were burned off in the accident. You faked, aren't they? You can't access the money. You need Leo's hand. It's my money, Marco roared, his calm facade shattering. I built this empire. You were just the caretaker. Now bring me the boy, or I burn this house down with all of you inside. From the floor above, a high, manic laugh echoed down the stairwell. Dante and Vivian looked up. Sal had dragged Clara out onto the mezzanine balcony. She was bound with zip ties, her lip bleeding, but her eyes were wild with delight. Tell them, Clara, Marco shouted up to her. Tell them it's over. Clara leaned over the railing, looking down at Dante with pure venom. He was never dead, you idiot, she spat. I've been communicating with him for 2 years, even before the bomb. I was the one who planted it. Dante felt the world tilt on its axis. You? His wife was going to leave him, Clara sneered, nodding toward Marco. She found out about the offshore accounts. She was going to go to the police. Marco needed a fresh start, so we removed the problem. We blew her up, and I stayed behind to watch the baby until Marco could return. Vivian looked at Marco with profound disgust. You killed your own wife? You let this woman poison your son just to create chaos and frame me? I didn't want him poisoned, Marco defended, sounding like a petulant child caught in a lie. Clara went off script. She was jealous. She was supposed to just scare you off, get you out of the house. But it doesn't matter now. Marco raised his rifle, aiming it squarely at Dante's chest. Give me the boy, Marco commanded, and I'll let you walk away. I'll let you live, little brother. Dante looked at the man he had idolized his entire life. He saw the greed, the narcissism, the rot that had eaten his soul long before he faked his death. You're not my brother, Dante said, his voice dropping to a deadly, vibrating bass. My brother died 6 months ago. You're just a ghost, and I banish ghosts. Marco's eyes widened. "Kill them," he screamed to his mercenaries. "Kill everyone but the baby," the foyer erupted. "Move!" Dante shoved Vivian so hard she nearly fell, throwing her behind the marble pillar, just as the stone exploded into dust where her head had been. Rat-tat-tat-tat! The sound of automatic fire was deafening in the enclosed space. Sal and the enforcers on the balcony unleashed a hail of suppression fire, raining bullets down on Marco's team. Two of the mercenaries scrambled for cover behind the overturned furniture, while Marco ducked behind a statue of a Roman centurion. "Stay down!" Dante yelled, leaning out to fire two controlled shots. He hit a mercenary in the leg, sending him sprawling, but the body armor absorbed the kill shots. "We can't stay down!" Vivian yelled back, ripping the hem of her silk dress to tie her hair back. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. "They have military-grade armor. Your pistols won't penetrate the vests. We're trapped." "I'm open to suggestions," Dante fired again, forcing Marco to keep his head down. "But unless you have a grenade in your pocket, we hold the line." Vivian looked around frantically. The foyer was a kill box. They were pinned, but behind them, the service hallway led to the industrial kitchen. Her mind raced back to the layout of the house. The kitchen had been renovated recently. The gas lines, the massive industrial stoves. "I need a distraction," Vivian shouted, grabbing Dante's arm. "No, stay here!" "Trust me," she screamed over the roar of gunfire. "Cover me for 3 seconds." Before Dante could stop her, Vivian bolted. She broke from the cover of the pillar, sprinting across the open expanse of the polished floor toward the service hallway. "Vivian!" Dante roared. He broke cover, exposing himself to draw fire. Bullets stitched a line across the floor, inches behind Vivian's heels. One round clipped the heel of her boot, sending her stumbling, but she tucked and rolled, sliding into the darkness of the hallway. Dante took a hit. A round grazed his left shoulder, tearing through the suit jacket and flesh. He grunted, the impact spinning him back behind the pillar. He clutched his arm, blood seeping through his fingers. "Boss! You hit?" Sal shouted from the balcony. "Focus on the door," Dante yelled back, gritting his teeth against the searing pain. Vivian scrambled into the kitchen. It was dark, illuminated only by the moonlight filtering through the high windows. She could hear the battle raging in the foyer, the screams, the gunfire. She ran to the main gas valve behind the 6-burner stove. She didn't just turn it, she kicked the pipe until the coupling fractured. A high-pitched hiss filled the room, instantly followed by the suffocating, rotten egg smell of mercaptan. The gas was pouring out at high pressure. She needed an ignition source. She scanned the room. The pilot lights were out. She ripped open the emergency drawer near the pantry. Flashlight, first aid, flares. She grabbed a red road flare. She could hear boots in the hallway. One of the mercenaries was coming for her. Vivian backed up toward the laundry chute, a narrow metal tunnel that dropped to the basement laundry room. "Come out, little girl!" A voice growled from the hallway. Vivian struck the flare. It sparked, then erupted into a blinding, sizzling red light. She didn't hesitate. She tossed the flare toward the hissing stove and dove headfirst into the laundry chute. Boom! The explosion was catastrophic. The accumulated gas ignited with the force of a bomb. The blast wave tore through the service hallway, blowing the kitchen doors off their hinges and sending a fireball rolling into the foyer. The shockwave shattered every window on the first floor. In the foyer, the ground shook. Marco and his men were thrown off their feet. The mercenary in the hallway was vaporized. Debris rained down. Plaster, wood, glass. The gunfire stopped instantly, replaced by the crackle of flames and the groans of the injured. Dante coughed, pushing a piece of drywall off his legs. His ears were ringing so loudly he couldn't hear his own breathing. He blinked the dust from his eyes. The foyer was a ruin. The fires from the kitchen were casting long, dancing shadows across the debris. In the center of the destruction, a figure stirred. Marco staggered to his feet. His Kevlar vest had saved him from the shrapnel, but he was disoriented. His expensive rifle was gone, buried under the rubble. He looked around wildly, his face masked in soot and blood. Dante stood up. His left arm hung uselessly at his side, blood dripping onto the marble, but his right hand was empty. He didn't reach for his gun. He walked toward Marco. Marco saw him coming. Panic, primal and ugly, flashed in his eyes. He reached into his boot and pulled out a combat knife, a jagged, serrated blade. "It's mine!" Marco screamed, his voice cracking. "It was always mine! I am the firstborn!" Marco lunged, a desperate, clumsy strike aimed at Dante's throat. Dante didn't back down. He stepped into the strike. He caught Marco's wrist with his good hand, his grip like a steel vice. Marco's eyes widened. He tried to pull back, but Dante was immovable. "You killed her!" Dante growled, his face inches from his brother's. "You killed your wife. You tried to kill my fiancée." Dante twisted. There was a wet, sickening snap of bone. Marco screamed, dropping the knife. He fell to his knees, clutching his broken wrist. Dante didn't stop. He kicked Marco in the chest, sending him sprawling onto his back. Dante straddled him, pinning him to the ground. He raised his fist and brought it down. Thud. "That's for Leo," Dante said, his voice devoid of emotion. Thud. "That's for your wife." Marco was sobbing now, blood bubbling from his split lip. I made you," he wheezed. "I am your blood." Dante paused, his fist hovering. He looked down at the man beneath him. A pathetic, broken creature who would burn the world to save himself. "No," Dante whispered. "You're a disease, and I've cut you out." Dante stood up. He didn't kill him. Death was too quick. Death was an escape. "Sal!" Dante shouted, his voice hoarse. Sal emerged from the smoke, limping but alive. He had Clara by the hair, dragging her down the stairs. "Boss, zip-tie him," Dante ordered, pointing at Marco. "Call our contact at the FBI, the real FBI. Tell them we have the domestic terrorist responsible for the car bombings 6 months ago. Hand over all the evidence Clara provided. Let him rot in a solitary cell at ADX Florence for the rest of his miserable life." Dante turned away from his brother's pleading eyes. He scanned the room, panic rising in his chest. "Vivian!" A cough echoed from the basement door. Vivian stumbled out, covered in soot, her hair wild, coughing up smoke. She looked like a disaster, and she was the most beautiful thing Dante had ever seen. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. He grabbed her face with his good hand, searching her eyes. "You blew up my kitchen," he choked out, a laugh bubbling up through the pain. "I didn't like the tile," she rasped, a weak smile touching her lips. Dante pulled her into him, burying his face in her neck. They held each other in the ruins of the house, surrounded by fire and wreckage, but standing on solid ground for the first time. "It's over," he whispered against her skin. "It's finally over." 3 months later. February 14th. Chicago. The nursery was bathed in the soft, pale light of winter. Outside, snow fell silently on the city, blanketing the scars of the past in white. Inside, the room was warm. The walls had been repainted a soft sage green. The crib was new. Leo sat up, clutching a stuffed bear, babbling happily at the mobile spinning above him. He was chubby, rosy-cheeked, and vibrant. The shadows under his eyes were gone. The poison was a memory. Vivian stood by the window, sipping coffee. She wore a simple cashmere sweater and jeans. On her finger, the heavy, ostentatious ring Henri Roche had chosen was gone. In its place was a sleek band of black titanium and diamond, Dante's design, unbreakable. Dante walked into the room. He moved well, though he favored his left shoulder slightly. He wrapped his arms around Vivian from behind, resting his chin on her head. "The meeting with the commission is done," he said softly. "And?" Vivian asked, leaning back into him. With Roche dead and Marco facing 3 consecutive life sentences, the territories have consolidated, Dante said. They confirmed it. I am the Capo dei Capi, the King of Chicago. Vivian turned in his arms. She traced the faint scar on his jawline. And what does that make me? She asked. The trophy wife? Dante laughed, a genuine warm sound that had become common in the house over the last few months. You? He looked at her with a mixture of reverence and awe. You're the woman who performed surgery in a nursery and blew up a hit squad with a road flare. You're not a trophy, Vivian. You're the boss. I prefer the surgeon, she teased. Dante kissed her. It was deep and slow, filled with the promise of a future they had fought for in blood. Happy Valentine's Day, Mrs. Moretti, he whispered. It's not Valentine's Day, she smiled. It's just Tuesday. Every day you're alive is a holiday, he said seriously. He walked over to the crib and picked up Leo, lifting the giggling baby high into the air. The boy grabbed Dante's nose, shrieking with delight. The house was no longer a fortress of secrets. It was a home. The monsters were gone, locked away in cages or buried in the ground. And in their place, a family stood, forged in fire, bound by blood, and protected by a love that was absolutely, undeniably lethal. And that is how the Ice Queen melted the heart of the Chicago underworld, not with sweetness, but with steel. The story of Dante and Vivian proves that sometimes the monsters aren't the ones with the guns. They're the ones smiling at you from across the dinner table. It reminds us that trust isn't given. It's forged in the fire of adversity. Vivian Roche didn't just save a baby. She saved a family from its own rotten core. What would you have done in Vivian's shoes? Would you have risked your life for a child that wasn't yours, in a house full of enemies? Let me know in the comments below. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and tells me you want more Mafia romances and thriller stories. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. I have a darker, even more twisted story coming next week about a billionaire who bought a wife only to find out she was an undercover assassin. You do not want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.